You don't notice the moment your life begins to fall apart. It never comes with a warning, never arrives with a sound. It happens quietly, in the spaces you overlook, in the seconds you don't pay attention to. It starts as a feeling you can't name, a heaviness you keep brushing aside because you convince yourself that everything is fine, that you are fine. But deep down you feel it. You feel something shifting, something slipping, something cracking beneath the life you thought was solid. You tell yourself not to worry, not to overthink, not to imagine things that aren't there, because you want to believe that the people you love would never be the reason you break. But sometimes they are. You wake up one ordinary morning thinking everything is normal. You breathe in the same quiet air, walk across the same familiar floor, look at the same person lying beside you. And yet something feels different, colder, still, like the kind of silence that warns you something is coming, even if you can't see it yet. You watch them sit at the edge of the bed, scrolling through their phone, not saying good morning the way they used to, not giving you the smile you once lived for, not offering even the smallest spark that tells you you're still wanted. And you don't question it. You blame stress, work, life, anything but the truth. Because the truth is the last place you ever want to look. You notice how someone else, someone you trust, starts showing up more often. How his laugh sounds different when she's around. How her smile changes when he walks into the room. How she lights up in ways she no longer does for you. But you push it away. You silence the voice inside you begging you to pay attention. Because you're the kind of person who trusts too deeply, loves too hard, stays too long. And maybe that's where the breaking really begins. Days pass and the distance grows. Her eyes avoid yours. Her words feel lighter, emptier, practiced. And when you ask if she's okay, she gives you the same soft lie. I'm just tired. Tired. Funny how people hide the end of a relationship behind a word that's simple. But you keep showing up anyway. You keep giving. You keep hoping. You keep holding on to something that's already slipping through your fingers. And then comes the moment you can't forget. She stands by the window late at night, staring at a world that doesn't include you anymore. Her shoulders tense, her mind far away, her heart already somewhere else. You ask her what's wrong, softly, because you're afraid you already know. But she says, it's nothing, and her silence hits you harder than any truth could. That's the moment something inside you knows. A quiet knowing that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. A voice that whispers what you've been too scared to face. Something is coming. Something that will break the life you've been fighting to protect. Something that will change you in ways you are not ready for. And by the time morning arrives, everything you believed in, everything you trusted, everything you built your heart around will fall apart. Because the person you loved is no longer the person standing in front of you. And the version of you that loved without limits. That man won't survive what's coming next. You wake up thinking the world hasn't changed. The same walls, the same floor, the same light spilling through the window. But the house feels different. Not empty, not quiet. Haunted, weighted, as if the air itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to break. You notice the little things first. A phone that buzzes more often than usual. A smile that vanishes the second you look at her. The way she keeps small details locked away, like a diary you'll never read. At first, you tell yourself it's normal. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has thoughts they don't share. But there's a cold under it. A sharpness you can taste like ice melting in water. A chill that doesn't belong to you, but somehow touches every part of you. Then you hear the laughter. Not yours. Not from a life you thought you were living. It belongs to someone else. You catch it once across the living room. Too close. Too easy. Their bodies leaning, their voices soft and quiet like conspirators in a world you're already being pushed out of. Your chest tightens. Your stomach flips. You want to look away, but your eyes won't obey. Just imagining it, you whisper. Nothing's happening. But imagination doesn't make your home feel like a cage. It doesn't twist your insides until every familiar corner feels foreign. It doesn't make you notice the stolen glances, the half smiles, the sudden silence when you enter a room. And still you stay. You smile. You ask about her day. You act normal because love makes you blind. That evening, your brother drops by just to visit. You pour your tea with trembling hands while they laugh together. Every shared joke, every tilt of the head, every quiet glance is a cut you can't reach, a space you no longer inhabit. You want to leave. You want to scream. You want to demand the truth. But fear holds you still. Fear of losing her completely. Fear of confirming what your gut has been whispering all along. And then the signs become undeniable. Shared playlists you're not part of. Inside jokes that leave you out. The way your brother's voice softens, shapes itself, trying, maybe, to sound like you, only better. And worst of all, the way she looks at him sometimes. That fleeting, dangerous look of someone already gone. You sit alone that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, questioning yourself, trying to convince yourself it's paranoia. But it isn't. It's real. And somewhere deep in your chest, the first seed of betrayal takes root. Not in words, not yet in action, but a whisper that won't leave. She's leaving you, and he knows. You feel it in the hollow of your stomach, in the tightening of your hands, in the weight of every breath. A truth you've been avoiding for too long. A truth that tells you, when it comes, nothing will ever be the same again. Not your home, not your life, not the person you were before. And in that darkness, a part of you already understands. The world you thought was yours is quietly slipping through your fingers. You think you're ready for the truth. You think suspicion prepares you. But nothing prepares you for the moment your world finally stops pretending. Nothing prepares you for the moment you see with your own eyes what your heart has been trying to deny. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that should have felt normal. I came home early, not to catch anyone, not to test anything. Just to reconnect with the person I thought I still mattered to. Maybe talk. Maybe fix something I couldn't name, but felt slipping anyway. The front door was slightly open. Just an inch. But sometimes an inch is enough to tell you that your life is about to break. I heard it before I saw it. A voice I wished I had misheard. A laugh I knew too well. Not hers alone, but his. My brother's. Right there, in the hallway, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't step forward. I didn't need to. The truth rushed at me like cold water, stealing every bit of warmth I had left. And then I saw them. Not almost. Not maybe. Not a misunderstanding the heart could excuse. No, this was real. Raw. Open. A betrayal, so clear it felt like the air had been ripped out of the room. They weren't standing like friends. They weren't acting like people who respected boundaries. They were close, too close, like the world around them didn't include me anymore. My hands trembled. My throat burned. I wanted to shout, to break something, to collapse under the weight of what I was seeing. But I couldn't move. My body betrayed me the same way they did. Frozen, helpless, unraveling. And when she finally looked at me, her eyes didn't show regret. They didn't show fear. Just a flash of panic, quick, subtle, before something colder settled in. Indifference. Distance. A detachment that hurt more than the betrayal itself. My brother tried to play it off with an awkward smile, a forced laugh. But the truth was sitting between them like a fire they thought I'd never touch. I saw something in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or maybe triumph. I don't know which cuts deeper. The world tilted under me, not in one violent moment, but in a slow collapse like everything I believed in was crumbling piece by painful piece. My voice barely escaped me. Just one word, small and breaking. What? No explanation. No apology. Only silence. And in that silence, everything inside me shattered. I didn't cry. Not then. Tears come from pain. But what I felt was beyond pain. It was emptiness, rage, humiliation, heartbreak. Too mixed to separate, too heavy to hold. I realized then that I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the version of myself who trusted without limits. The man who believed loyalty meant something. The man who thought love could survive anything. All of that died the moment they looked at me without remorse. And in the ruins of that moment, something cold and steady rose inside me. A thought I never imagined I'd feel. I'm done. I won't beg. I won't break in front of them. They'll watch me walk away, and one day, they'll feel the weight of what they destroyed. That night, I packed a small bag. Not because I knew what came next, but because I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. The walls felt like tombstones. The air felt poisoned. Every corner held a memory that hurt to look at. I stepped out into the night. Rain started falling, cold, relentless, almost purposeful. It soaked through my clothes, chilled my bones. But for the first time that day, I felt something like clarity. Some betrayals don't need explanations. Some endings don't need noise. They happen in a single moment that breaks you so quietly it feels unreal. And mine had only just begun. There are moments in life when everything feels too real, and then there are moments when nothing feels real at all. The days after that night fell into the second category. Time moved, but I didn't. The world spun forward, but I stayed frozen in the same place where my heart had broken. Walking outside felt like drifting through fog. People passed me, their lives whole, their voices clear, but everything sounded distant, like I was listening from underwater. Even the sunlight felt borrowed, warm on everyone else's skin, cold against mine. It was as if the world belonged to everyone except me. I didn't call her. I didn't call my brother. I couldn't listen to the apologies they didn't mean or the excuses they rehearsed. I couldn't stand the thought of hearing them try to fix a wound they created with their own hands. Some things can't be undone. Some betrayals carved too deep. I stopped sleeping. Nights became long stretches of silence where my thoughts clawed at me. Food lost its taste. Music lost its meaning. Every melody felt like a reminder of what used to be soft moments, quiet mornings, a love I thought was safe. Even my favorite songs felt like strangers now. Most nights, I wandered the streets without a destination. I watched strangers laugh in warm cafes, watched couples hold hands like the world couldn't touch them. I envied them in ways I never thought I would. Envied their innocence, their trust, their ability to love without fear of being replaced. Sometimes I imagined confronting the two people who broke me. Imagined shouting, demanding answers, tearing down whatever fantasy they thought they built together. But each time I pictured it, the anger didn't stay pointed at them. It curved inward, settling on me like a stone on my chest. Because the truth was cruel in its simplicity. I wasn't just angry at them. I was angry at myself. For trusting so easily. For loving so fiercely. For believing that loyalty could protect me from the very people I gave it to. In the quietest hours, I lay awake asking questions to an empty room. Why did this happen to me? Why was I the one left behind? What did I lack that he didn't? What part of me wasn't enough? But the room never answered. Life rarely does. Life doesn't hand you explanations. It offers choices. And I was staring at two of them. Stay broken, or break open and eventually rebuild. Both terrified me. Staying meant drowning in heartbreak, but rebuilding meant leaving behind the version of myself I had always known. It meant letting a part of me die, so something new could live in its place. So I ran from everything familiar. I found a cheap motel on the edge of the city, a place with peeling paint, a flickering lamp, and walls too thin to hide the noise of passing cars. It was perfect, a place where no one knew me, no one expected anything from me. No one cared enough to ask why my eyes looked empty. I ignored every call, every message, every attempt at reaching out. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to heal. I wasn't ready to face the pieces of myself scattered across the floor of my life. I lay on that stiff mattress for hours, listening to the hum of the city outside, feeling completely detached from the world I used to belong to. And slowly, very slowly, I realized something I never understood before. Despair isn't the end. It's the weight that breaks you open. It's the fire that melts everything unnecessary. It's the darkness that forces you to find a light you didn't know you had. It doesn't feel like strength. It doesn't look like growth. But it is the beginning of both. So I let myself fall. Fully. Completely. Because before you rise, before you rebuild, before you discover who you're meant to become, you have to break. And I had broken deeper than I ever thought a person could. But somewhere inside that collapse, a quiet promise formed. I will rise. Not today. Not tomorrow. But I will. For now, I allowed myself to crumble. Because this was my fall. And every rise begins exactly here. The mornings became lighter. Not because the sun had changed, not because the world had shifted, but because I started noticing it again. Small things, tiny details I had stopped seeing, slipped back into my awareness. The distant hum of traffic, the rhythm of my own heartbeat, the way rain slid down the window pane, cold and purposeful. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was something more dangerous, more honest. Awareness. A recognition that the world existed outside of my pain. And maybe so could I. At first, my mind kept replaying her. Her smile at my brother. The way she abandoned me, silently, with gestures and glances, not words. Every memory felt like a wound I couldn't close, a scar that burned anew each day. And then it came, unexpected, like a spark in a dark room. A stranger, a voice I didn't recognize, said something simple, and it hit me like lightning. You cannot heal by holding on to them. You heal by holding on to yourself. Those words weren't about her. They weren't about him. They were about me. For the first time in weeks, I looked in the mirror and didn't see just a broken man. I saw a survivor. Someone abandoned, betrayed, left to rot in despair, and still standing. I started small. A jog in the morning when my body screamed to stay in bed. A shower that lasted longer than 2 minutes, when I had once barely moved. Writing down thoughts I wasn't ready to voice aloud. Every small act felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I had forgotten I owned. I began noticing the world differently. The city streets, once cold and suffocating, became familiar companions. The rain, once a reminder of loneliness, felt cleansing, purposeful, like a promise. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't crave it. I craved control. Control over the one thing I had lost control of, myself. Slowly, painfully, the truth crystallized. Walking away didn't make me weak. Walking away made me powerful. The man who left that room, the one hollowed by betrayal, was beginning to rebuild. Piece by piece, brick by brick. And in that rebuilding, I discovered clarity. I would rise, not to hurt them, not to prove anything to the world. I would rise to prove that even after everything was stolen from me, I was still mine. That night, alone in my small room, I whispered to myself, I'm not her reflection. I'm not a shadow. I'm my own story. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the weight of despair. I felt a spark, small, fragile, but unyielding. A spark of something stronger, something unbroken. And I knew the man I was becoming would not merely survive this betrayal. He would transcend it. The city no longer felt like a cage. It became a playground, a battlefield, and a mirror all at once. I walked the streets with my head held higher than before. Not arrogance, not pride, but a quiet awareness that I had survived. And survival had made me sharper, steadier, unshakable. I started working on myself in ways I had neglected for years. Physically, I pushed my body until exhaustion became a friend, sweat washing away the remnants of despair. Mentally, I challenged myself, reading, learning, planning, not to impress anyone, but to reclaim the man I had lost. Every morning, I looked in a mirror and saw someone I barely recognized. Someone stronger, someone quieter, someone who no longer depended on validation from those who had abandoned him. I ran into people I hadn't seen in years, friends, colleagues, strangers, and I realized the version of me that once shrank, apologized for existing, that version was gone. I had rebuilt myself from the inside out. And the best part? I didn't do it to make them jealous. I didn't do it to make her feel regret. I did it because, finally, I cared about myself more than anyone else. The transformation wasn't instant. Some nights, memories of her and my brother haunted me, like shadows stretching longer than the day. But each morning, I greeted those shadows differently. Each sunrise became a reminder that my story was mine to write. Small victories became fuel. A stranger complimented my work ethic. A colleague asked for advice. A smile from someone who didn't know my past reminded me that I still deserved light. And as I rose, I felt something else stirring. Something I had buried beneath grief and despair. Confidence. A quiet, unshakable belief that the life I had imagined for myself wasn't over. It had only been delayed. The thought of her no longer held power over me. Not yet fully, but it would fade like a scar that stings only when touched, but otherwise remains as proof that I survived. I remember the pain, yes, but pain had transformed into purpose. And in that transformation, I realized something vital. Revenge doesn't need to be cruel. It can be quiet. It can be elegant. It can be your success, your peace, your rise, seen by those who betrayed you and felt as a lesson they never expected to learn. That night, I whispered to myself in the mirror, I'm no longer the man who could be broken by love. I am a man who shapes it. And for the first time since that day, I smiled. Not a forced smile, not a fleeting smile, a smile that meant I was no longer lost. I was rising, energy, the quiet confidence, the grounded presence, the calm certainty that I no longer lived in the shadow of betrayal. I wasn't theirs to define anymore. And then came the small, subtle moments of poetic justice. A mutual acquaintance mentioned how she flinched when my name slipped into conversation, as if my memory had turned into a mirror she couldn't bear to look into. A colleague told me she had tried to reach out, only to be met with silence. Rumors spread that my brother, the man who thought he won, was struggling to keep up with the life he tried to steal. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The best revenge is not anger. It is peace. It is watching your life rise, steady and unstoppable, while the people who betrayed you quietly drown in the consequences of their own choices. One evening, I walked past a cafe she used to love. She was there, alone. When our eyes met, for a fraction of a second, her expression cracked. Not with longing, not with love, but with the cold realization that the man she abandoned no longer belonged to her world. And that single, silent recognition, sharp, undeniable, was worth more than any confrontation. I discovered freedom in the smallest things. Traveling alone, laughing without hesitation, exploring new places without carrying the weight of old pain. Every choice became a reminder. I'm not defined by what they did to me. I am defined by what I choose next. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it arrives dressed as silence, discipline, and a life rebuilt so beautifully that those who wronged you can't help but notice. I didn't chase them. I didn't call. I didn't confront. I simply became a man they would no longer recognize. Work became my battlefield. Every project, every task, every late night was a declaration. I'm not broken. I am thriving. People around me noticed before I did. Not just the changes in my appearance, but the shift in my energy, the quiet confidence, the grounded presence, the calm certainty that I no longer lived in the shadow of betrayal. I wasn't theirs to define anymore. And then came the small, subtle moments of poetic justice. A mutual acquaintance mentioned how she flinched when my name slipped into conversation, as if my memory had turned into a mirror she couldn't bear to look into. A colleague told me she had tried to reach out, only to be met with silence. Rumors spread that my brother, the man who thought he won, was struggling to keep up with the life he tried to steal. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The best revenge is not anger. It is peace. It is watching your life rise, steady and unstoppable, while the people who betrayed you quietly drown in the consequences of their own choices. One evening, I walked past a cafe she used to love. She was there, alone. When our eyes met, for a fraction of a second, her expression cracked. Not with longing, not with love, but with the cold realization that the man she abandoned no longer belonged to her world. And that single, silent recognition, sharp, undeniable, was worth more than any confrontation. I discovered freedom in the smallest things. Traveling alone, laughing without hesitation, exploring new places without carrying the weight of old pain. Every choice became a reminder. I'm not defined by what they did to me. I am defined by what I choose next. I came back quietly, not with anger, not with threats, not carrying the shattered pieces of the man they once knew. I returned as someone unrecognizable, not because I had changed who I was, but because I had finally embraced it. Strong, calm, untouchable. The first time I saw her again, it was as if the world paused. Her eyes flicked up, and I caught it the flash of something I hadn't expected, panic. Not fear of me physically, fear of what she had lost. My brother tried to act casual, but even he couldn't hide it. The confident stride, the quiet assurance, the subtle aura of a man who had walked through fire and come out polished. It hit him like a punch to the chest. They both realized, in that instant, what I had become. And for the first time, I understood the power of absence, the power of silence, the power of rising without needing to explain, justify, or shout. She approached, voice trembling, rehearsing an apology that would never land. I didn't. I stopped her with a calm look. Not rage, not hurt, just truth. You didn't lose me, I said softly. You lost yourself trying to steal something that was never yours. The words weren't cruel. They were clean, precise, and they hit harder than any scream, any confrontation, any fight could have. My brother shifted uncomfortably, guilt flashing in his eyes. But I didn't need to speak. The silence said enough. In that moment, I realized that revenge had never been about hurting them. It was about showing that the man they tried to break could not only survive, he could rise above. I walked past them, slow and deliberate, every step echoing confidence and finality. They reached for something, apology, explanation, recognition, but I didn't look back. I didn't give them the satisfaction, and as I stepped out into the city, it felt different, brighter, larger, full of possibility. I had returned not as the boy they abandoned, not as the man crushed by betrayal, but as someone untouchable, whole, free. In that quiet, unspoken moment, I understood the most potent truth of all. Some victories aren't loud. They don't demand attention. They're silent, and they last forever. The weeks after my return were quiet, not empty, but deliberate. Every step I took felt intentional, grounded in a clarity I had never known before. I heard about them, heard from my brother, through whispers, glimpses, fragments. Her relationship faltered. His arrogance dissolved into regret. And I didn't rejoice. I didn't celebrate. I simply observed, a silent witness to the consequences of choices they had made. It was then I realized, closure doesn't always come from confrontation. It comes from living, from stepping fully into your own life so the past cannot follow you. I rebuilt old connections and nurtured new ones. I laughed again. I worked again. I loved myself again. The man who had walked away heartbroken was gone. The man who returned, calm, confident, untouchable, was unstoppable. One evening, I passed the park where we used to sit together. I paused, letting memories wash over me. Not with sorrow, not with anger, but with acceptance. I had lost something precious, yes, but I had gained something far greater. Myself. And I understood that they would always remember me. Not as a victim, not as someone they could control, manipulate, or break, but as the man they underestimated. The man who chose himself above all else. In that realization, I felt peace. Not the fleeting kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from knowing you have survived, grown, and risen. I didn't need to see them again. I didn't need to confront them. I didn't need to explain. Life had already done it for me. Some victories are silent. Some triumphs are invisible to the world, but they are the ones that last forever. The city lights shimmered in the rain as I walked alone, each step a rhythm of the man I had become. I didn't look back, not because I hated them, but because I no longer needed them to define me. I had loved deeply, and yes, painfully. I had been betrayed, abandoned, underestimated. And through it all, I had survived. I had risen. I had grown. The scars remained, subtle reminders of every heartbreak, every choice I had made. But they no longer pained me. They were proof. Proof that I had endured. Proof that I had reclaimed myself. Proof that I was stronger than anyone had thought. Sometimes, I still remember her smile. Sometimes, I remember the sting of betrayal. But those memories no longer chain me. They remind me that I am free. I stopped in front of a window, watching raindrops race each other to the edge. And I realized, life is not about holding on to those who leave, but about walking boldly toward what remains, yourself. I am not broken. I am not lost. I am my own story. The world continues, full of laughter, sorrow, love, and betrayal. But I have chosen my path, and it is mine alone. And finally, I whispered to the night with calm certainty. In the end, some goodbyes are blessings in disguise. Because walking away didn't destroy me. It set me free. And freedom is the truest form of victory.